see the screen now, right? So we were saying about filters. So we have seen how to create a filter, how to tag it to one servlet, and how you can unplug it and plug it up, right? And how you can actually use this filter in different ways to actually end up as parallel to our servlet, right? So that is what we had. So we will see today the parameters, how we can actually set different parameters. Whatever the configurations we have set for servlet, right, will work only for servlet, right? We can't take those things to make it work in filter. So filter have got its own configurations which you have to set, right? And based on those configurations, you can actually retrieve them into the filter, right? Because even filter needs may need some configuration, maybe like database name, database, so many things. Because even while validating, let's say if it has to validate a user, right, then it has to get the details from database, let us say, and it has to do validations and all, right? Even for that, we have to have something which is reachable to filter. You cannot hard code your database names, usernames, and passwords, right? That's why we have something called filter config. So that's the next one. We'll just see how to create a filter config for this, for the current filter, which is filter 1. Let's go back to our web.xml. If you can see here, this was the filter which we created, and we tagged it to the servlet called this servlet, which is servlet filter 1, right? We were working on these two, and we tagged one more servlet called servlet filter 2, which was actually from the filter, right? So that is about that. And now, so how we can actually create parameters is the same way we created for servlet. We have to go to the filter tag, right? And inside the filter tag, so you will be able to create something called init param. So this is same, right? From here on, it is same. Like you will be defining different init params for different attributes you want to set, right? So like it will be your param name. Let us say you have it as some DB name, something, right? And then you have your parameter value, which is, let's say XYZ. Right, so something dot db.com, something. This is my db name, right? And you have your init param. Let us say you have a parameter name, which is db user. Have a parameter name. Let's say db. Let's say system. Let me take one more. Init param we have. So the parameter name comes to, let me make it as some db host. Let us give us the same name maybe, or let me use as one something dot some value over here. So this is how you can actually mention your initialized parameters for sorry, this should be parameter value there. That's right. Parameter value. Perfect, right? So this is how we can actually mention the parameter values into this, right? So now, how can we actually access these parameters into filter is a question. Because here you have to get the config actually, right? But here we can't take something called servlet config, right? We have to take a filter config, right? So whenever we get routed from servlet to filter, right? So as I said, the first method which will be triggered is init, and you can see here init method there is an argument called filter config which has been triggered. So let me copy this up and paste it at the first before this method, right? Now here, so whenever this got triggered, right? You have to catch this filter config. So for that, let me create a variable here which is filter config, right? Let me call it as lobjconf is equal to null, and whenever we route it to this, let me assign this to this. Let us say is equal to, you have your fconf, right? Filter. Now we have a hold of what actually we are doing over here, right? Now actually you can read your filters and all. So in your build filter, let us say before reading anything, before doing any part, right? I'm just doing something called reading the config. Now if you want to read each and every config, let us say I'm taking it as db name is equal to, you have your config dot get init param, everything will be same as we have said in Servlet, right? And you just have to take the parameter name, db name, and print it here. That's it. So this will give you the db name as such. So let us say we have an out, right? Or let us take some valid one so that we can actually let us say it is username, and let me take it as XII, right? And let us say password, let us say 1234, right? So that we can actually validate them here. So let me take username here, right? User, right? And let me take password, so this password here, right? So this is my there is my password going on here, right? I have got my user and password, so I'll just print them. I'll just say config user, use my user here, and let me just make it as a password here. So this is my password. Okay? So here what we're going to do here is okay, so whatever we are getting from login, right? So to solve it is routed back to filter. That's fine. We use this username and password to validate these two, right? So here we have a duplicate value, so let us take it as conf user and config password, so that we can actually distinguish them. That's fine. You can follow your nomenclature whenever you actually start coding that, right? Now here, instead of hard coding this XYZ and 1, 2, 3, let me use conf user here, and let me use config password here. Right, that's it. That is what actually I want to do. So let's break here and break here, right? So whenever we get into this, so what we are doing is we are actually reading from the configuration files. So what should be username and password? So this can be anything, right? It can be the logic to retrieve it from database too. That doesn't matter, right? So this is how you can actually get something from the configurations, which is from filter config, right? And filter config will be set, or will be you will be getting that from your init method whenever it got triggered at first, whenever filter is called, right? So this is how you can actually do that. Let me start the server. Let me rebuild it first. Let me start it up. Now let me open up the browser. So this servlet was tagged to login.html, right? So let's go back and see your login.html, right? So first let us give XYZ, the right one, and you have 1, 2, what was the thing which we have taken here? It was 1, 2, 3, 4. So let us take 1, 2, 3, 4 and login. Now you can see conf user. We have config user here. We have free processing and it got passed, right? This is what we actually got from the what is that filter. Now here it actually didn't went to that. Why? Because here in my filter one, I just missed the password part, right? Let me also make it to password here, because it is taking something and it is routing back to something else, right? If it is fail, that's one. So let me just rebuild this, run it back to login. So we have a XYZ and 1, 2, 3, 4 plugin. You can see it went to select one, right, where it is actually moving to this pre-processing config user is so and so, and it's a processing the thing, config user is this, and so it is XYZ and 1, 2, 3, 4, which is correct. So it is user and it has to go back to servlet, correct. So in this servlet I said welcome so and so, right? So why it is not getting here? I just missed something. So this should be my password, PW, right? That's fine. Okay, so we have a username. So these things you are getting from query string. You have user, password, perfect, and configuration user is this, configuration password is this. You are checking your conf user, conf password. That's fine. Build it up. Start my server here, so that everything will be affected back. Let's go back to this. Let us say login.html. Let me take XYZ and 1, 2, 3, 4 login. Yep. Now you can see the part, right? Now you can see that yes, it has the configurations. We read the configuration. So as the login is successful, right? That's why it gave back. It went to servlet one again, right? Where you can see yes, welcome to servlet so and so, and the post processing and how much time it took, right? So that is what we have written in that. So this is how you can actually create your configuration file for your filter. In the same way, you have, if you want to read all, right, you also have something called init params. We have already seen this part in servlets. It will give us something called enumeration type of string, right? So this will give us all the enumeration tags. So whatever we have, enumeration, let us say lobj enum. So this will give us all configurations irrespective of whether you want a key or not, right? So that is what the enumeration part does. So let us take while loop of lobj form enum dot, you have something called has more elements, right? So here we can get the key. Let me call it as key here is equal to lobj enum dot next element will give you the each and every element, because enumeration will act as a cursor here. So for this key we will be getting some value. Let me call it as lstr value is equal to we have enum dot get init param. Oops, I'm sorry. We have to get it from your config, right? So your config dot get init param of you. So this is where we get the initialized parameter. So we got a key and a value. Now let me just go and bring this up. So before coming to this, let me just say I want to make a pattern here. So that I can differentiate when we actually show it in a browser, right? So the same thing, same pattern here. I'm just splitting up. So here I'll show something. As we have key. So key will be, let us split this up, and we have a key here, and value will be, let's split it up. So there is a key and a value which you are printing until it ends, right? So this is how you can actually get all the configurations which are defined in our filter, right? So all the configurations that are defined here will be read over here. Let me rebuild this up. Restart the server. So go back to the page. You have your login.html. Let me give it as XYZ and 1234 login. Now you can see you have a key and DB host, everything, we'll get everything from the configuration file, whatever we have actually executed, right? So that is how you can actually read some configurations from the filter, and it all depends on how you want to save the details, right? Don't go for saving some sensitive details in configuration too. Yes, you can save up to some extent, right? So that whenever you want to access something, you can just get the access details and access the database or internal files which are encrypted in your server and get the details, right? You can do that. So that's how we do something called reading a configuration, and this is something which is a filter config, which is an important term, filter config, in order to read the configuration files as such, right? So that is how we can read this. So this is all about filters, guys, and all about the servlets which we have and all. Now we have one add-on thing which got introduced in Servlet 3, which is like you don't have to create a web.xml for each and every servlet. It won't be created. Now how it is whatever you have seen. If you remember, when I created the project servlets, right? Let me create one more project here. Let me just say it as dynamic web project, right? And then let me call the servlets maybe 3, right? Now here you can see it says dynamic web module version, right? So this dynamic web module version is, we are talking about servlets 3. So if you give 3.0, right, this is nothing but your servlet version, right? It's a web version. So web in Java is basically always points to servlets. Take anything, it always points to servlet, because that is the servlet is the main scripting methods or scripting we have in Java for server technology, right? So that is what we have. So these all versions, whatever you can see here, is servlet version. Now I hope you understand. So initially I just said we'll be explaining this, right? So this is something which we start. So till now, whatever we have executed is 2.5. The basic difference, the main difference is when we select your 3.0, right, which means you are actually creating something on the latest version of Servlet, right? And in latest version of Servlet, we have something called annotations, right? Let me show you what exactly is it. Let me go to next. Everything else is same, right? Just create a web.xml and finish, right? Let me close all these things. Now let me go back here and let me create a servlet. Let me say first serve something. So you can see here, when I go back to my web.xml, right, you can see there is nothing being created. Whenever you create any servlet, right, normally what happens, it will create something called servlet tag. If you remember, it will create a servlet tag. You can also create your own servlet tag. It's okay. It gives you permission to even do servlet tag and servlet mapping and all. Everything you can actually create inside, and even before that, you can actually create your filter mapping, right? You can create your something called context param and all. You can do everything, whatever you can do. But the only thing which got added over here is, without creating servlet itself, right, you can actually see or actually give provision what is the URL path. Because the main motive of creation of these things for a servlet is, right, is to map the URL for this class. That was the main motive over here, right? You can see what is the class name of servlet which you want to map to which URL. That's the main motive of this tag. But here in servlet 3 it has been solved with just one token called annotation. Now what is annotation is, this is what we call it as annotations, right? So this is something which represents a metadata, right? Which means before writing your servlet, right? So your Eclipse will add something called @web servlet. This is something which comes under your annotations, right? Where is that? Okay, let me just point it to. Now you can see here, this web servlet is something which comes under your annotation tags, right? So that is what it is. You are just mentioning, and you can see here URL mapping part you are directly giving over here, which means it will directly take up this URL mapping part, and it will automatically map to the class name here, right? And even the name of your servlet will be the same. That's why I said whenever you are creating any servlet, right, just make sure your name and class are same. You don't have to, you can change them, right? But yes, that's why if you maintain the consistent name, right, it will be easy for you to understand, okay, which servlet you're going to call. So that's why it happens. So this is something which is called as a annotation, and yes, these annotations will work only on Tomcat 7. If you have configured your Tomcat 6 and the old Tomcat side, annotations will not work on that. It doesn't have, they doesn't have support to annotations of servlets, right? So this is something which is used to map your servlets, right? And yes, this again everything. Yeah, Krishna.
So what will be in web.xml if we annotate it here?
What will be?
Can we, in the web.xml?
It won't be anything. If you create any servlet, it won't be anything. There won't be anything. If you want to create your web.xml for the same servlet, you can create that here. Right? Let us say if you want to create any something called configuration files, right? Config files. You can create that servlet tag, just servlet tag here, and actually you can create the same thing. The story, the complete story which we have repeated in configuration, creating configuration and context, right? Everything will be same over here. The only thing is URL mapping. This servlet mapping part, instead of giving your URL mapping here, you can directly use over here to map it up. Right? That is what it is. Fine. Fine, Ujjwala? Okay.
Yeah.
So you can just try out this, creating all the configurations, whatever I said right before. You can just try out again over here. Right? It will be same across again, right? So that is one thing which is add on your servlets. Now, once we have done this, right, so let us see how we can actually deploy this project. We have this project called Servlets, right? There are so many pages and all. So in my web.xml, we have kept something called login.html as a startup file. That's fine. We'll just keep this. Now, let us see how we can actually deploy it. Deploying is something, I'm not talking about something in this Tomcat deploy. Let me stop this up. Right? So this is something which we have seen in our Tomcat, but this is not the right, this always works with only Tomcat, right? So in real-time situations, you have to do something else. Now what is that is? Now let us say you have taken the complete project. The first thing how to take this complete project is like this. So always rebuild your project so that all the components will be generated afresh. And once you are done with your creation of this, right, just take a WAR file. So this WAR file is nothing but your web archive file, a web archive, which is also called as a deployment file. Sorry, deployment zip file. It is same as zip file. What it does is it will just take up all the resources, whatever is needed. It will package everything, right, and it is ready to deploy. That is what it gives. So just right click on your project, just go to something called export, and you have export WAR file. You can also have multiple things. If you don't have, right, you can actually create a jar file. You can see you can create a jar file, right? You can actually also, I think, yeah, you can also create a EAR file. EAR file is something which is used to deploy this in WebLogic, right? Oracle's WebLogic, right? you have your runnable jar file. Right? There are so many options. Also, you have something called war file, right? Web archive file, right? Now, let me go to the next. Now you can see destination. It asks for destination and what exactly you want the name. The project name will be this, and destination will be. You can actually give. Let me give some destination as. Okay, let me just. So this is my Tomcat folder. Let me just go to Tomcat. Save. Now here I have to give some name. Let me give the same name, Servlets name, and save. Now you can see I'm going to save my war file here. You can actually give any path size. It doesn't matter. Now, if you want to actually export the source file, in a sense, all the source files will also be exported. If you feel that it has to be exported, then do that. Otherwise, don't do, because your war file size will increase. All the resources will be attached again to this. You don't need that, right? And yes, you can just say overwrite existing file if there is any war file, right? If you want to directly overwrite, just do this. Otherwise, just uncheck it so that it will ask for whether you want to replace it or not, right? You can do either way, right? Let me finish. So when I finish, you can see there is a war file created. Now this is a war file which is a complete package of your project, right? Now this is something which is very easy because your Eclipse provides everything. So in previously, everyone used to create a package using command prompt. They have to know what are all the resources we have, right? We can just create JVAR, right, space and all. But yes, if you are using NetBeans or Eclipse or any editor, right, it is now very easy. Now this war file is ready to deploy, right? Now, the next thing what you have to do is, you have to start your server. Let us say I have Tomcat here. Let me just take this Tomcat, which is my Tomcat, some 7041 Tomcat, right, which you have downloaded. Now how can I start my server is the first question. You can start your server in two ways. You can directly go to your bin path and you have batch files called startup and shutdown. Either you can do this way, or if you want to make sure everything is going fine, you can go to your command prompt, right? You can just copy this path. Yes, anyways, I'm going to run the Tomcat from here, right? So I just run to this path and I'll just say startup, right? So you can see this will start my Tomcat, right? So this will start my Tomcat. Anyways, it may take some time if it is heavy, but yes, if your process everything is fine. Now you can see server has started at this time. So this is the first step of your deployment of Tomcat. But yes, sometimes your web server will be always maybe running, right? Now how can I make sure my Tomcat is running is a question. If you remember, I have already shown this part to you. You have to just go to localhost, right? And when you enter your port, right, this port here, it will take you to this page. If you can see this page, which is a Tomcat page, which means you have started your Tomcat successfully. You can also see that over here, right? Now here, why I have taken localhost, first thing is I want to map it to my local IP, and my local IP is already localhost. And how about this port? Port is nothing but you have to give the port of your configuration. Now here in my Tomcat, in my config file, I've already shown you something like, so in the server file, right, you can see there is something called connector. In my connector, I have mentioned my port as 49s. If you change this part, which means you have to restart your server and you have to rebrowse your web server with some other port. So that is something which you have here. So this is how you can actually start your server. First step. Second step, you have to deploy your web archive, right, which is a WAR file. Now how to do that is, so here you have something called manage your app. Let's go to that. Now when you click on that, it will ask for some credentials, right? You can see here. Now these credentials are something which I have shown you on Tomcat users. In my Tomcat, you can just open it up here. Now you can see we haven't created anything anyways, right? So you can create your own users over here, right? So let me show you. I think I have shown you in my other Tomcat. Let me open up this one so that we can just copy that users and paste it here. Yeah, perfect. Now you can see here, these are the users. So let me just copy this up and paste it. So by default, it will be commented, guys. right? You can just go back here and paste it here. Now this is something where you have given your manager GUI. The role name is manager GUI. You will get these manager GUIs from your Apache Tomcat documentation. There are so many roles. You have your admin role and all, right? So here manager GUI, for both the roles you are mentioning the same user, admin and admin, or admin 1 and admin 1. We just gave 2 users. You can actually browse on with any user you want, right? So that is what it is. Now here there is one important thing which you have to understand. So we have shown some configuration, but server is started now. Now let me go and check whether this works. When I click on OK, right, it says it is asking me the same thing again. Why? Because after starting the server, I have set my configurations, which will not work, right? Once you change any of the Tomcat configuration, any of the conf files, right, what you have to do is you have to restart your server. Now how can you restart my server? You can see here, I will be using my same console. I will call some shutdown.batch. Now you can see it gets shut down, and let me start it again. Now you can see my server has started again. Okay? So you should see this part, guys. You should see server startup in so and so milliseconds. So this is the last time you get once the Tomcat starts. Right? Let's go back again. Let's say cancel here. Now let me browse this again. Let me open the new instance of my browser so that everything will be fresh again. So let me go to localhost. You have your 9999. Right? It will take you to Apache. Now click on this and OK. Now you can see it accepted this username and password, which is our manager GUI, right? We just gave. You can use either of them. You can also mention any number of usernames here, right, for the admins. Right? That is what is here. Now you can see there are different sections over here. The main section which we are looking for is these 2 sections, which is our applications, right? This applications table is something which is to monitor your web application. Now before going to this, let us just see this part, which is your maybe yes, war file to deploy, right? So either you can give war file to deploy, or you can maybe just give the context paths and all. Don't get into this. Here you have the direct path. It says select your war file to upload, right? So let me browse it up, and we have that in our something called, let me just go back here. So it is in my Tomcat, right? Let me just copy C Tomcat. Here you have your servlet war. Click on that. Right? Now your servlet war is selected here. Right? Servlets.war in this time. Now let me see. So these things are something in my applications table, right? So these are default applications being you'll get these things by default with your Tomcat, right? Don't undeploy them. In order to undeploy, you can use this button, right? So pertaining to every project or application, you have so many things. I'll explain you this, don't worry, right? Now as of now, let me click on deploy. So this is a message. Tomcat will give you very simple messages, guys. It just says OK, which means your servlets is deployed. Now you can see here you have your servlets project, right, which you got into your application, right? Now this is what is your application. Now how can you browse this? So how can you browse this is, it's a simple way again. You have the same way which we used to do. So let's now click on that. Now you can see it is a deployed one in our version. Now I can also take my IP. It's okay. Let me take my IP, or let me take my host name. Host name is some Srinath here. Let me just see whether it works with Srinath. Yeah, it works. You can see this is my URL as such, right? Let me copy this, go back to some other browser, paste it here. This is a website now. Click on that. Right? You can see your login being used, right? So that is your server page. Now you can see no page has got displayed here, right? That is how it works. Welcome file list, if you don't mention any of the page, it will directly go to your login page. Now, once you are in login page, right, now let me go back and say, you know that there is a resource all page 1, let us say, right, or page 2.html, right, or page 1.html. You can directly go to your browser here, just type in something called page 1.html, right, and it will take you to page 1. Now when you go, it completely works as we used to see. Everything works as same, right? We have already seen. So everything here is working from something called a Tomcat. Now you can see whatever you do, right, will be shown over here, right, in the Tomcat log, right? So let's go to home again. So this was our home. Let me give some XYZ login, right, and password is 1234 and login, right. Now you can see everything has got, it is working as same as we used to see in our Eclipse. Now anyways, my Eclipse Tomcat is not running, guys. I'm not running anything from Eclipse. It is something which is completely being executed from the web server, right. So this is how we can deploy. Now you can see, this is how it works, right, everything. So this works in the same way in all browsers. Let's go. Excuse me. So let me take you to Chrome here, right. So on the same thing, I can see the same, right. Maybe XYZ, and you 1, 2, 3, 4 long, right. You can see the same thing, right. Same what to be given. So that is how the deployment you can actually do. You can deploy your web application into some server, right? And this is the same way you can do even in real time. Real time in the sense not in office or company. If you have your own website and if you want to deploy, this is the same thing you have to follow. But only difference is sometimes if you can maintain your own server and you want to buy some space from network guys, right? You can do that. Otherwise, you don't have to worry about all these Tomcat start and stop and all, right? Because network people, like you have so many guys like Network Solutions, GoDaddy.com, all these guys are someone who will provide your domains and your servers too. They'll also give web servers. If you are developing a .NET site, they'll give you Windows servers with IIS being configured. If you're actually working with your Java, they'll give you the corresponding server. If you are working with PHP, right, or they'll be having everything. You just have to make sure to give the WAR file. This is something which you have to give, right? And that's it. They'll be deploying, and you can actually browse on with your domain, right? So that's how it goes, right? So this is how we can actually deploy something, and this is how we work with our web applications, right? So that is all about servlets, guys. So we are done with servlets. Yeah, go on, guys.
The deployment process will be the same for any other server other than Tomcat?
See, it will be same, but see, starting up a server may not be same data because the folder structure and the way we are starting may not be same. But the only thing is, it will be like a same. You have to configure something and you have to start it up, and you have to access the console, or you have to access some UI like this, Tomcat UI or some UI, and you have to deploy, and the same thing works. So it will be almost same, right? Almost same. I won't say that it is completely the same way, but yes, everything will be same in every web server. Right? Now this, why we do have this is in order to yeah, Jami? Hello, Jami?
Yeah. Once you complete whatever you're saying, then I'll.
Okay, fine. So let me explain this, huh? So now you can see that everything is working fine, right? Which is everything your page, your website is working fine. Now let us say if you want to undeploy your project, right? So pertaining to this, you can just click on undeploy. Now here there is one more thing which you have to understand. Let me refresh this. Right, already exists in the I'm sorry. Let me go back to my Tomcat, manage app. Right, now here, so you have a servlets page here. So let me just say servlets. Yeah. So here we are. Now here, if you want to deploy your, undeploy, you have a direct button here. If you click on this, right, your complete project will be removed from this web server, right? And if you want to stop this server for some time, you can just click on stop, right? Now you can see it stop. Now go back and try to refresh your page again. It says, right, it will sorry guys, just a moment. So here you can see the resource is not available. It says that the resource is not available here, right? That's what it says, because you can monitor everything from your server itself. If you want to start again, click on start, right? Go back to the page and just refresh, right? It will be here. So that is what it happens here, right? So you can just start up the server and undeploy. If you want to undeploy, undeploy. If you want to reload is nothing but what it does is it will kill the old sessions, right? And it will restart. Now you can see there is one more button called expired sessions, right? So this is the maximum time you can give. So the web container, the existing web container will have a by default session timeout of 30 minutes, right? You can change for your own base things, right? That's fine. But always keep the same. Don't worry about the express sessions and all unless you have some requirement on that, right? So this is how you can actually manage your application. Yeah, Johnny, what was your question?
So where do we use the jar file?
Yeah, jar file is, yes, I can hear you now, yeah. Okay, so the question was where do we use jar file, right, Johnny?
Yeah, I mean that is what we hear more often, like than WAR file.
Yes. So jar file is something like, see, if you have any like let us say you have some desktop based application, right? We created some applets and something like applets and suites, right? So in that case, what we'll be doing is we'll be creating some type of jar file, which is a desktop executable jar file. That's the first case. Second case is, let us say you have created all your classes. Those classes are your APIs, right? Those things are your APIs. Like, you can see we have included some of the jar files in our previous classes, right? Some jar file, like JDBC jar file. So what happens is they'll create a simple project where they'll embed all the classes which are capable of, doing some part, right? So for those APIs, we normally call them as DLLs, right? DLL, which is dynamic link libraries, right? Which you create DLLs and we can use the DLL across any application. You just have to import that and use. The same thing is jar file. You cannot use jar file to deploy your web application. You have to go for either a WAR file or a EAR file, right? WAR is nothing but a web archive and EAR is enterprise archive, which is basically used to deploy your web application, right? So that your jar file is something which is related to core, right? All your core components, whatever you develop, just take a jar file and give it to anyone so that they can import. Now how they can import? They just have to copy that and paste it here, which is a lib folder. This is the first way you can do, or you can just go to project properties here and you have something called build path, right? In your build path you'll be having all your libraries, right? Here you can add a jar. Either you can add an external jar, whatever you have. So, right, and you can also add a jar if you feel that you have in the same project, right? As we were using Eclipse, the latest version, right? That's why it added something called, let me show you something. Now here, all these jars are Tomcat jars, right? It got added directly. Now you have something called Servlet API.jar here. If you don't have this in your Tomcat or in your Eclipse, right, you will never be able to run your Servlet project or any Servlet in using your Eclipse. In previous version, this never used to happen. What used to happen is everyone used to go to properties file, right? In your project, you have a project properties file, right? Here, whenever you go to library side, when you click on add external jar, you can go to Tomcat folder. In Tomcat folder you have lib. So in this lib you have your servlet.api. So this is a API which will get added into your this Tomcat. You can see here even this is pointing to the same API. If anything happens to this API, this will never work. That is how you can actually create a jar file and add. These are the jar file works, right? Which will give you some support to the external applications. Right, John?
Yeah, even in let's say if you are going to modify something and some system which has got a lot of classes and everything, so all the existing class will be in a jar file, right?
Yeah. Again, you have to take it to jar file. Yeah. If you change anything, right? See, your jar file contains all the dot class files. Okay. When you create any Java file and when you run it, right, it will give you a bytecode, right, which is dot class. All those dot classes will be packaged into something called jar file. So jar file is nothing but a normal archive file where all your classes are there. That's it. And jar file have got one significance that your JVM can understand a dot jar. That's the main thing, right? And it can interpret all the inner dot class files into the direct explosive classes. That is how it got. Right, Johnny? Was that clear?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now here,
So one more question, like in a three-tier architecture, so all the servlets will come in the UI layer, right? And
yeah. No.
all the business currently those will be coming in a jar file in a separate class.
Yes, you can take it that way. Yes, you can also take it. It all depends on how you are actually interpreting your thing. The servlets, yes, it comes under the first layer to show up your. Normally, how it comes is your servlets and all your JSPs will come as a UI, main thing. Right, you'll be using JSP as a front-end part, UI part, and the host scripting will be servlets. And the business layer, as you said, if you are actually creating any jar files or not, yes, you can use it as a separate business layers, and you can use business layer to connect to your databases. Yes, you can say that. Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Now that was one thing, and yes, there is one more very important thing which you have to understand here. Now I said, whenever you want to change anything, you don't have to change your class files. It's a very important statement which I have made in my previous classes, right? Now, if I want to change any of my servlet, let us say, right, in my servlet, of any servlet, right, if I change anything, if I change some logic, what I have to do is, I have to take a complete new, anything. It can be even a JSP file or HTML, right? If you change anything, you have to take a complete war file again and redeploy everything into this. Now you can understand what is the significance of the web.xml I was talking about. So what I was talking about is, if you maintain your web.xml, every time you don't have to redeploy asset. Now what does it mean? Here, whenever you deploy any of your web application, right, into your Tomcat, so this is my Tomcat folder. In my Tomcat folder, there is a folder called web apps. So all the projects, whenever you deploy, will be copied to something called web apps. You can see the project called Servlets is here. Go to that. Now you can see all my pages, everything is here. My index, login page 1, page 2, page 3, everything is here, right? Right. Let me go to web.inf classes. You can see all my servlet classes are packaged into dot class files. That's how it works. Now, where can I find my web dot? So this is something which is my configuration file. Let me open it up. Now you can see whatever configuration we have given is being copied. Now what we'll do here is, now let us say this is my Tomcat. Now here, whenever I give my XYZ and 1, 2, 3, 4, right, this is a past situation. That's why it went to my past situation, right? Now let us give something else here. So let's go to filter config, which is, this is my filter config. Now let me give username as ABC. Now I want to change username as ABC. So this is my name which I want to give to my filter. Now I have changed my configuration. So whenever you change your configuration, always restart your machine. Now even if I change my configuration, you can see here, let's go back to the main page. I'll give my XYZ and 1, 2, 3, 4 login. You can see it's okay. It worked. Fine. It is taking. It is taking directly. Don't worry. But normally, always okay. It works with Tomcat 7. I forgot. Yeah. But normally in your old Tomcat servers, right? Whenever you change anything, you have to actually restart your machine. But always practice that. Whenever you change your configuration, don't stay because I just changed one configuration maybe, right? Maybe I may add one more file here, or sorry, one more tag here, or something a bigger change, right? At that time, don't rely on this. Always try to restart. How to restart is you just go and shut down your machine. Sorry, this and start up this, right? So your application will be started now. Yes, the same thing works again here, right? And go back again. Now let us say I am giving my XYZ and some password, login, right? It will be failed. Username and password is wrong, and this is. Now let me give some ABC here, and 1, 2, 3, 4 login. Now you can see it took we went to the buffer. So that is the power of configuration files, guys, right? We didn't touch anything. We just changed the value at one place, and the whole Tomcat server we just took the complete configuration file as such, right? Now here let me change it back to ABC123. Right, you can see here Tomcat has started. The last line is this side. Now let me save this. When I save this, right, you can see here, right, I saved my configuration file. In my Tomcat 7 you can see it reloaded the context. It reloaded the complete context, right? It reloading the context with name servlets. Why? Because I've saved something, it immediately cached that, okay, there is some change, it completely reloaded. That's why it was working. Now let me go back again here. Let me just give some ABC and some stuff. It won't work. Because give some same ABC and 1, 2, 3 and your password as 1, 2, 3, 4 login, right? Now that's why it is taking. Why? Because it is reloading the context. So that is how your configuration file works, and it is same as now. So this is all about how we can actually work with the application. And now if you have understood the complete servlets concept, JSPs will be very easy. Right? So this is the main base foundation of complete server technologies in Java, right? And yes, even in your frameworks, you have to understand this if you want to have a very good understanding in your frameworks. Basically, instructions, things, right? So that is all about Servlet, guys. So we'll be starting with JSPs from next class. Okay. And if you have any doubts, you can just ask me, or maybe tomorrow's class I'll just take completely for doubts if you have any, and from next Monday, right, I'll start with JSPs. Yeah.
We'll be using the same link for tomorrow class, right? The one we have sent today?
No. Tomorrow, first try to access the old link itself. That's a recurring link. So this is not a recurring link. This is something which is I created on fly. Right?
Okay.
Right, I'll try to call him, but that will be the permanent link. Right? Don't worry about that. Right? If
the old one, right?
The old one, yes.